Anybody who knows me knows quite well that I am a little bit more of a fan, generally speaking, of the superstar wide receivers, superstar tight ends, the non early running backs in fantasy football. But right now, especially, and maybe this year, I think there's an even greater place in our drafts for a more robust running back draft strategy. It's more popular now, but I think there are some angles we can take, some specific players that we can target, some ways we can construct our teams even a little bit differently than the growing popularity of the early running backs. And right now, before training camp, before we get to the preseason and all that kind of stuff, it's a particularly good time to build some of these teams. We're going to talk a little bit about it. And of course, we're going to draft a couple of robust running back teams. Yes, Eric Beinfort is actually going to do that. Let's do it. All right, good afternoon. Yes, if you're watching live, thank you for joining. And my apologies for the change in schedule today. We'll get back tomorrow to our regularly scheduled 11 a.m. Eastern. Next week on Tuesday, back to our regular schedule. Had a little technological snafu this morning that prohibited me from streaming. So we got it all squared away. We're going to talk some running backs and actually probably going to end up talking more about receivers. I sort of cheated the system. I want to talk about some of these mid to late round receivers. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Pi. Good afternoon, Roni. So as I said, yeah, we'll get back to the regular schedule. If you're listening on the podcast feed or at a later date, you don't care about all of that. But as always, join me Tuesdays through Fridays, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 10 a.m. Central, the real time zone. And of course, we'll be back with Legendary Sickos later this weekend. I really do think, like, it's funny because I'm drafting in Best Ball Mania specifically this year. For anybody that's new or doesn't know, I'm drafting 0 running back teams because I think in half point PPR with 18 rounds, with the way the market has shifted towards early running backs, even your favorite 0 running back tout bro hates 0 running back this year. The amount of times you will hear, especially as it pertains to underdog specifically, right, which is half point PPR, 18 rounds, no bonuses like there are on DraftKings. People often talk about, I just don't really feel comfortable if I don't get at least a couple of early running backs onto my team. And that may be totally fair. No one's denying people's feelings, their feelings. But I think there's an exploitable angle in especially certain tournaments, some top heavy tournaments where it's going to be completely underutilized. And they're, again, in half point PPR, it's this weird, it feels wrong. In half point PPR, running backs score more points. So you would think, well, and it can be harder in half point PPR with no bonuses for the superstar wide receivers to A, match the running backs, and B, distance themselves from, if a random wide receiver catches 4 passes for 80 yards and finds the end zone, you get a really useful wide receiver score on underdog. It's a little bit more difficult for those early superstar wide receivers to really gap the field, right? First of all, it's a little bit different. We don't got to get into all the specifics. We're talking about single week. You're not trying to score the most points over the entire season, which is another reason to take an alternative strategy to what your opponents are doing. We're very fixated on this is the best strategy to score the most points in sort of our thought process, because that's what makes the most sense. But that's not really what we're trying to do in, say, Best Ball Mania or the DraftKings Millie. And on DraftKings, it makes a ton of sense on drafters, which is we're going to do a drafters draft a little bit later. Cumulative scoring, you have to score the most points among 100 and whatever 18,000 teams from week 1 to week 17. You probably feel like you need a little bit more early running back production. Makes total sense, right? On DraftKings, it's counterintuitive. You would think on underdog half point PPR versus DraftKings full point PPR with those bonuses, the scoring setup does seem to favor the superstar wide receivers and such on DraftKings a little bit more. But as we'll see, the rooms are much more forgiving on DraftKings. The ADP is, in my opinion, and I think the general consensus, is a little bit softer. The field doesn't necessarily take into account those types of differences in the scoring settings, right? So you can kind of have your cake and eat it too on DraftKings with still getting some early running backs and still feeling like you built a really strong wide receiver room. Maybe you got some awesome tight ends. You feel good about the quarterback. Like, you can build a team pretty much every draft, unless you get really super cute on a DraftKings, that you feel pretty good about regardless of the sort of running back stuff. Underdog, in my opinion, a little bit more efficient. And I've said this a bunch of times, but I do want to reiterate because I feel really strongly about it, even more so this year, but it's an every year thing, is if running backs score more points relative to the other positions on Underdog, all running backs score more points. And I want to benefit from that across the board and draft more running backs than other, and try to play into the chaos factor and try to sort of scramble up all these mid to late round running backs into a blender and hope that across 150 teams, I spit out a good one. And then you've sort of made a bet that, like, look, when, especially when week 17 gets here, I need Ja'Marr Chase to have a big game. Ja'Marr Chase has done it in week 17 before. I need Amon-Ra St. Brown or CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson or one of these guys who obviously are all capable. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, AJ Brown, whatever. All of these superstar wide receivers are clearly very capable of being the air quotes guy you need. So you've sort of made that bet and then said, I'm going to draft more. Running backs are scoring more points, and my opponents are drafting fewer of them because they're drafting, right? They're drafting them early, and then they need late wide receivers. I'm going to sort of try to play that against them. But right now, right, we're recording this on June 9th. We're going to draft some teams here on June 9th in just a second. Yes, Vision, we're going to do drafters. We're going to start with a DraftKings Millie, and then we're going to hop on drafters. And yes, I will be giving away a free ticket at the end of the show to the drafters main event. Shout out to the good people at drafters. I'll get the spreadsheet up for you guys in the chat in a little bit. But at this time of year, and if there are mid to late round wide receivers that I feel really strongly about as both just underpriced relative to what I think their expectation is for this year, underpriced relative to their upside, maybe underpriced relative to their floor. We'll go through a couple of those sort of segments of wide receiver that if I feel strongly about those guys, we often talk about back to front drafting. Meaning, if there's guys later in the draft at wide receiver that I feel more comfortable with, maybe than other people do, and I think that they're undervalued, then that should inform my earlier picks. And again, especially on DraftKings, where I'm not getting punished as much, where I'm getting even better values on some of these wide receivers that I like, or tight ends, or whatever, I actually do genuinely like, despite the fact that most people just think all I do is draft zero running back teams, I genuinely think that a more robust running back type start, and that is a flexible strategy. There's no rule how many running backs through the first X amount of rounds. It's conceptual in that I want to draft fewer running backs, but get my stud running backs early, and then I have all these wide receiver shots, and I'm going to draft more wide receivers because I'm going to get good values. I have guys who I think are underpriced. I'm going to get stacks. I can be flexible at quarterback and tight end now as well. And there's a couple of these different pockets that I specifically am informed this, why do I actually like some robust running back type drafts? There's a couple of different pockets of the wide receiver position. Once you get into, so first of all, you can draft this range, here from the Zay Flowers, the Ladd McConkeys, the Jameson Williams, the Luther Burdens, Terry McLaurin's, Mike Evans. I like all of those guys. You can include those guys, right? Those guys are generally 4th round picks or 3rd, 4th round picks. You can have a robust start with one of those guys, or even sometimes two of those guys. But then you get in to another window of Christian Watson. Let's not talk about Rome because he's got this weird foot news, whatever. But I think Rome Odunze is fine. First round top 10 picks at the wide receiver position in Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson. Maybe you like Jalen Waddle. I think Jalen Waddle is fine. I like him a little bit worse than some of these other guys, but I think Jalen Waddle is fine. If you really like Jalen Waddle, Parker Washington is one of my guys. Go check out the video from 2 weeks ago, maybe, about Parker Washington. And if you haven't been drafting Parker Washington and you're afraid to chase the steam, you're going to probably be sitting out the summer P. Wash because he is steaming up the boards, and the Jaguars won't stop talking about how awesome they think he is. So I don't think the hype is going to come back to earth on Parker Washington. But I really, really like Parker Washington. I think Brian Thomas Jr., it remains to be seen if the end of his rookie year was the real truth or year 2 was the real truth. But I'm willing to bet on it at pick 70 or whatever. Makai Lemon, another first-round pick, wide receiver that I really liked as a prospect. If you like the Cardinals guys more than I do, right? There's a window here of real upside plays. Brian Thomas Jr. was just a 1-2 turn pick. Parker Washington was factually one of the most efficient wide receivers over the course of the whole season. If we just take the second half of the season, Parker Washington was absolutely one of the best wide receivers in the NFL last year. We can get those guys for cheap prices. We can get these first-round pick NFL rookie wide receivers, Carnell Tate, Jordan Tyson, Makai Lemon. You can get those guys while having your early running backs. They can sort of try to offset your, look, I don't have A.J. Brown on this team, but I'm going to try to recreate A.J. Brown in the aggregate, right? Which is what a zero running back team does with running back. Like, I'm not going to be able to match Jahmyr Gibbs. How do I recreate Jahmyr Gibbs in the aggregate a little bit through volume at the running back position? There's that sort of like upside shot tier, right? The Parker Washington tier, which is, I think, a combination of some floor, but then like Brian Thomas upside, right? Maybe Marvin Harrison bounces back. He is the player we thought he was as a prospect, whatever. Then you get into what I sort of like the boring chaperone range, but I think they're great values that they fit these types of rooms really well. Michael Pittman. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, are just like generally underpriced. And Michael Pittman, to me, projects as the wide receiver 1 there, is a pretty good fit with Aaron Rodgers as sort of the chain mover on the outside, has been a big target earner for his entire career. Wan'Dale Robinson, I think Wan'Dale Robinson is just a straight up good pick, right? Especially for these structures. But overall, you have some boring, Jacoby Myers. I think Ricky Pearsall is a pretty fun click. So there's this next tier here. Then we move down again, right? Then you get, another first round. I know the Jets stink. I know it's not fun clicking on the Jets. But when do we ever get first round NFL draft pick wide receivers this late? It's generally a pretty good pick to make in the macro, right? I think Jalen Coker is a good player. I think Romeo Doubs, who I don't even have like ranked all that highly, is another good chaperone. The Raiders, obviously Brock Bowers is the wide receiver 1 for the Raiders, but the Raiders don't have a wide receiver that goes off the board until Jalen Nailor and Trey Tucker. That seems good. Rashid Shaheed is a pretty fun bounce back candidate. I've started taking him a little bit more recently, in that it was not pretty when he got to Seattle last year, but they signed him to a huge contract, 3 years, $51 million. I think that would indicate that they would like to use him. Just a couple of years ago, we've been drafting Rashid Shaheed at much higher prices than this while he was on the Saints. Now he's on the team that won the Super Bowl last year. Maybe Kubiak being gone doesn't flow absolutely everything through JSN. Who knows? Maybe the defense takes a step back, etc. And then we get into. I love Ryan Flanoy. I think Dejon Stribling is a good click, right? Isaac Tesla is on the Lions. That seems fine. Antonio Williams. There's just like Denzel Boston already getting early hype from the Browns. Again, I know it's the Browns, but a decent prospect, second round pick that we can get later. There's just a bunch of upside swings and even some floor plays to mix in the mid to late rounds at running back that can allow you to, of course, take Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. But I'm scooping up the Josh Jacobs fall. You also have the Rashee Rice and Malik Neighbors. You can sort of, how could you offset the other guys getting these superstar wide receivers on your teams? Well, draft the superstar wide receivers in Rice and Neighbors and make a bet that getting those guys in the 3rd and 4th round is just as good. We'll see what happens with Neighbors' health. We'll see what happens with Rashee Rice's knuckleheadedness. But the upside is clearly there. We were taking Malik Neighbors in the 1st round before. We were almost taking Rashee Rice in the 1st round earlier this year before his troubles. So there's so many different ways to, like, again, sort of recreate the wide receiver stuff in the aggregate, especially on DraftKings, especially on drafters, where those running backs are a little bit more powerful. I'm obviously drafting zero running back and hero running back. I draft all of the different structures, but at this moment right now, I'm going to draft more robust teams than I will later in the summer, because the last thing is that later in the summer, we start to find out, like, an issue with drafting the cheap running backs right now. The 15, 16, 17, 18th round guys. The majority of the time, we don't really know what the pecking order is, who the backup is. I have guys that I like. I'm totally speculating and making what I would call educated guesses. There's been some rumblings, right? Malik Davis is actually the backup in Dallas. That's been sort of my belief the whole time. But I also don't think that, like, if something happens to Javonte, that Malik Davis is just going to become, 95% of the snaps. Jaden Blue will play, maybe Phil Maffa plays, Hunter Lupke, right? But we don't know about these. Like last year at this time, I talked about this last week. We didn't really know whether it was Kyle Monangai or Roschon Johnson. And if you just assumed it was Roschon Johnson because he's the vet, you wasted a whole bunch of shares. Stone cold zero for the whole season, right? That's the risk. The late wide receivers are a risk of maybe not being impactful from a fantasy sense, but we know generally who's going to make the team. We know some of the, we at least know, like, the Ravens wide receivers are some of my favorite last-ish round wide receivers. There's 4 guys: Rashad Bateman, Elijah Surratt, Jacoby Lane, and Tez Walker. I have my favorites, but you at least know, like, look, all 4 of those guys are going to make the team. And alongside Zay, 2 of them are going to play football for the Baltimore Ravens this year. So you can cycle through those different guys, right? We know that Chris Brazzell may not be anything in the NFL. He may not play very much. He's going to make the team. He's probably going to get an opportunity at some point, unless he's like Jalen Hyatt level bad. And even Jalen Hyatt got a shot in the NFL, as bad as he is. So later, we will find out these backup running backs. We will find, who is the handcuff to Jonathan Taylor, who is the handcuff to Javonte Williams, who is the handcuff to Josh Jacobs. We'll know with almost 100% certainty, 90% certainty or something like that. We will know. And I'm hopping into the DK Millie now. If you'd like to join me, 7 out of 12 full. We'll know later. And then it makes structures where I take advantage of those guys even more powerful, because I know I'm not wasting roster spots on Roschon Johnson. I'm not wasting roster spots on DJ Giddens last year. I'm not wasting roster spots on some of these guys, because we get the information, right? You get training camp information, you get preseason information. The reporting and stuff from the beat writers is insane nowadays. We get so much. We're drinking from a fire hose in terms of how much access we have to what's going on in camp and the pecking order and the depth charts and all that different kind of stuff. So we should use that to our advantage. And I do think that right now is a better time to get some of your early running backs, despite the fact that, yes, I am much more of a wide receiver, bro. Let's see. Polo says 0 running back has been feeling really good after I got used to the landscape. I feel like I'm robbing pods with wide receiver firepower. Look, I'm always going to be a 0 running back, bro, at heart. But I think you have to be able to, something I've gotten a lot better at. I draft. It's funny because last year I had my worst year from a best ball results perspective. And everybody's like, well, he's a 0 running back, bro. He probably didn't draft. I drafted a ton of Jahmyr Gibbs. I drafted like 20-something% Jonathan Taylor in the second round. I faded Saquon Barkley. I did a lot of the running back stuff right. Actually, I drafted Bijan Robinson. I drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. I drafted Jonathan Taylor. I felt fine about my running back stuff. It was actually my wide receivers that failed. that failed. So it's just funny how those things work out. But I historically, like before the last couple of years, before this year, have been poor about not even just being stubborn in that you can't draft X amount of running backs in the early rounds. I don't believe in any of that stuff, but just sort of robotic, right? Like I draft while I'm walking the dogs. I draft while I'm cooking dinner. I draft whatever. And you just get in the rhythm. You're like, oh, it's the 3rd round. I got 10 seconds left, wide receiver, whatever feels natural to you, the names that you gravitate towards, whatever. And I think I was stubbornly building some structures, just falling into the robotic trap of just like, well, I know I like this guy. I know I don't want to fall behind at wide receiver. So you just sort of get in this rhythm and not stopping and thinking about, can I build these? How much validity is there to some of these other structures? How can I draft them differently and or better than some of the competition is? And then certain times throughout the summer, what are some structures that help us more now, and we'll be drafting differently later. So it's a good time to get some of those things in. And the back to front drafting stuff. Like, I think in years past, I would have said, well, you love Ryan Flanoy, you love Trey Harris, you love these Ravens wide receivers, you like whatever, Michael Pittman and such. And then I would say, like, well, I like those guys, but I'm a zero running back, bro. I got to get, I'm a zero or a hero running back, bro. I don't feel comfortable taking these early running backs. Well, you said you just named off like most of your favorite picks after round 9 are wide receivers. So shouldn't that inform some of your earlier picks? We should be able to use that information to our advantage, and it's something that I'm trying to get better at. Is like, okay, use right. We're going full cojones on the table this year, and some of my biggest cojones on the table players are mid to late round wide receivers. So that should help me drive some of my early round exposure, even if there's some players in the early rounds that maybe I don't love quite as much as, like I don't love Ken Walker. Drafting Ken Walker in the second round, early to mid second round gives me the ick. Drafting Derrick Henry in the second round gives me the ick. But if you love some of these other guys later, it should feel a little bit less icky. I'm going to take Ashton Jeanty here because he is my favorite guy at the 1-2 turn from a running back perspective. Matt says I need 2 running backs in the first 5 rounds. Prefer even having 3. Scotchy, good morning / good afternoon. Jeanty, amen. Cot team. There is, Polo says, I'm leaving rooms with Jefferson, Rashee Rice, Ladd, and Derrick Henry. And I will say that the whole Rashee Neighbors thing is definitely a part of this for me, but also like feels a little bit like cheating. You know what I mean? It's like, well, you are getting your superstar wide receivers as well. And they are, I didn't talk as much about them because I don't want to keep talking about Malik Neighbors and keep talking about Rashee Rice as these just like generational wealth opportunities. But everybody wants to draft, right? Air quotes, everybody. And it's the royal we. It's not literally everybody, but the majority of the people that you'll listen to or draft against or talk to feel much better. I think Saquon here. Man, give me a little Saquon action. We'll talk about preferring early running backs and like the whole, I want to get X amount of early running backs, but then they also are the people who won't draft Rashee Rice and Malik Neighbors. It's like this weird thing where actually the zero running back bros maybe don't need Neighbors and Rice as much, like me. It's not that they don't need, if they're hits, they'll work on any structure. But if you draft Ashton Jeanty and Saquon Barkley, some of the best fits on this team now are like, well, how do you make up the ground at wide receiver? Is like fucking 3rd round Rashee Rice, 4th round Malik Neighbors. That seems like a pretty good way to make up your ground at the wide receiver position. So those guys play into it too, right? If I'm willing to bet my chips that like, look, if Malik Neighbors ends up being healthy, even just for like the second half of the season, this is a slam dunk. If I'm willing to make that bet again, that should inform, you should be willing to take Jeanty over CD. You should be willing to take Saquon over London or Bowers. As much as I love Brock Bowers, I can still get a bunch of Brock Bowers, but be willing. I don't feel comfortable with Jonathan Taylor. I don't feel comfortable with James Cook, but drafting some of those guys because of what I have, again, in this instance, just in round 3 or round 4 or round 5 or whatever, but also later in the draft with some of those other guys we talked about. What did I miss? It's been a day. Casual Chad viewer says, "Gotta love Scataboo news." I have not done my daily reading of all the coach speak and all the camp stuff. So what did I miss on Cam Scataboo? Why are you drafting running backs again? What happened to you? Let's see. Do you have a preference zero running back construction? So on zero running back construction, I absolutely want a lot more than five running backs. So you obviously were doing 18 rounds there with a 2-5-8-3. My favorite structure for a 0 running back on underdog is 2-7-7-2. And I would say on DraftKings, it's like 2-7-9-2 or 2-7-8-3 or something like that from a 0 running back perspective. Whereas the robust side, I'm drafting 4 or 5 running backs and like a shitload of wide receivers. It's never cool to draft running backs. I do agree. I agree. The beauty, again, so there's another fun part to this is, we got this weird, damn it, there goes Rashee's here. So Neighbors Ghost, but see, now I can take Rashee frickin' Rice on a team with 2 early running backs. I kind of don't really understand why Rashee hasn't moved back up. I guess I shouldn't say that. I understand why Rashee hasn't moved back up. I just don't agree with it. He hasn't moved back up because he's in fucking jail. That's generally not a great thing for our 3rd round pick to be sitting in a jail cell at the moment. Or, I don't know what he's doing. Maybe they're outside or they're playing cards or, I don't know. I don't know what the conditions are. But another guy that I think is kind of crazy that I'm trying to scoop up, and another guy who fits this robust stuff is Josh Jacobs. Like, I'd never draft Josh Jacobs. Never draft Josh Jacobs. You guys, if you know me, like 2nd round pick, Josh Jacobs, or like 2-3 turn Josh Jacobs is just like the antithesis of what I believe in for like spending my highest draft capital. But we're getting 4th round. Now Josh Jacobs is all of a sudden becomes a great pick because we are, again, similar to Rashee, similar to Neighbors, similar to I've come around on George Kittle. I'm doing some rankings updates that I'll hopefully push live tomorrow. I've come around on George Kittle because the news just keeps getting better and better. If I'm willing to bet against the market on Rashee, and again on Neighbors, Scattaboo, Kittle, whatever, then Josh Jacobs is back at look, we don't have to be excited about it. If Tyreek Hill was still old Tyreek Hill, I would draft Tyreek Hill, and he is a scummy dude too. Like, I don't know if Josh Jacobs is a scummy dude or whatever. It makes me feel uncomfortable that he got arrested for something serious also, but he hasn't been charged. He's back at practice. Like, he's healthy. I don't know. Like, he got this fall, and then we sort of, it's certainly still possible he gets suspended or something, but it seems pretty unlikely if you don't get charged with something that you're not going to get suspended for like the whole season. So, like, I don't know. That feels pretty good. I sort of like, these are just opportunities that open the doors to some of these structures that maybe I wouldn't normally draft. I use Josh Jacobs on under. The craziest shit ever is I draft Josh Jacobs on both sites, and I'm drafting only 0 running back on underdog, and I'm drafting more early running backs, and I can draft 0 running back teams on underdog with Josh fucking Jacobs as my running back 1. Whereas I can draft robust running back teams here on DraftKings with Josh Jacobs as my RB3, and I still get Rashee Rice on that team. That's insane. Whether or not it works, whether or not whatever, these opportunities, like, these are the types of things. I always think about it like this. When Rashee had the original suspension potential issues last year or 2 years ago, whatever it was, 2 years ago, he was falling, and it felt scary as shit. Is he going to get suspended? How long is he going to be out? Am I going to be able to advance Rashee teams? All that kind of stuff. And then you look back and you're just like, what? That was such. Now, he got hurt, and so it didn't end up mattering. But if he had stayed healthy, 7th round Rashee Rice teams were the best teams in all of these tournaments. And you look back and you're like, I should have taken this opportunity. You're not going to get it on every single team. You're going to get plenty of other different combinations of players. You're going to get plenty of teams that don't have Josh Jacobs on them, because if it doesn't work, that stinks. But I always think about when the season gets here and I look back and Josh Jacobs isn't suspended and he's fully healthy and Rashee Rice is ready to roll and Malik Neighbors, it's week 6 and Malik Neighbors looks like Malik Neighbors. Like, and you look back and you're like, you, why did you, because you were scared? Because it was scary. Like that feels silly. I am actually going to do Mike Evans. I do so much Lamar. Evans, of course, plays against Saquon Barkley in the week in week 17. I mean, if Lamar comes back, and there he goes. But I draft a lot of Lamar as it is. So let's build something a little bit different for once. Northland is seeing Carnell Tate and Christian Watson getting some steam. I agree. Patrick's top exposure on Underdog is Ryan Flanoy, a true spike weaker at heart. You really do love to see it. If you happen to snag a rushing upside quarterback, you are adjusting that 7 running back. I don't adjust too much for the archetype of the quarterback. I'm gonna take Parker here because Parker is one of those. Like if Parker, the Jags, quite frankly, I really like the Jags as a stack, and the Jags are a great reason, in my opinion, to also draft more early running backs. You can get Parker, Brian Thomas. The ADP fluctuates a little bit depending upon the site that you're on and how easy it is to get them or whatever. But like if you were like, I could have done Parker BTJ and set up a Jaguar stack, and you can do that pretty easily. And it's pretty easy to see like, well, if Parker's actually good, like he was last year, and Brian Thomas Jr. bounces back, it's pretty easy to see how that stack is really powerful at cost. And because they all sort of have their, right, some people don't really buy the Parker thing. And then Brian Thomas was not very good last year, and we can explain it away, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. It's still possible that maybe he's just not as good. But this Jaguars offense is really good, and we're excited about Liam Cohen, and Trevor Lawrence goes whatever in the 80s. But you can stack up the Jaguars pretty easily. You can stack up the San Francisco 49ers. Would you like to stack the San Francisco 49ers? You can include CMC on that team or not. I don't really like CMC, obviously, but I love it. I said obviously for those people that don't know. I'm kind of betting against CMC this year, but like the San Francisco 49ers are going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL, and you can stack them up whenever you want. And again, it's fairly affordable. I wouldn't even take Jacobs if he was healthy at this price. Well, first of all, he is healthy. Based off tape, he's obviously declining, and they were still run heavy due to the Love injury. He didn't spike that hard even with touchdowns. I mean, which running back? That's fair to dislike Jacobs. I've never thought he was good. You're not drafting Jacobs because you think he's like a stud running back. You're drafting him because he scores fantasy points. Like point blank period. Like he had 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns, and he gets 3-4 targets a game. He's a fine receiver. There's multiple 30-point games in here, a pretty high floor. It wasn't good at the end. I agree. But like, if Jordan Love is healthy now, like I actually don't want running backs on teams that are outrageously run heavy. Like I want you to be a modern NFL offense that throws the ball, moves the football down the field, and scores points. The best thing that can happen for a running back is his offense to score points. And passing actually helps you score more points. It helps you get more first downs. The running backs can catch more passes, right? A reception is worth 1 point whatever. You're taking because he was in the early third when the draft opened. You're taking because he like how is he worse than Kyren Williams or Javonte Williams or Cam Scadaboo or Bucky Irving or right? He's moved now into a tier where he deserves to be. He was not a good pick at the previous price, and he is now a good pick at the new price, in my opinion. I understand if you disagree. I kind of problems with disagreeing with that. Let's see here. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to take Makai Lemon here. So let's do Makai Lemon. Got to start thinking about quarterback, though. Yeah, it's just a lot of volume. Boy, do I have something bad to tell you about Quinshon Judkins if you don't like Josh Jacobs. Speaking of inefficiency, a bad offense, doesn't catch passes. I definitely don't agree with Judkins. I like Tootin, though, and I like Scadaboo, too. So the beauty of it is you can draft, you don't, just because I like someone else doesn't mean, hold on, I need to make sure I don't get boxed out of quarterback here. Let's just take Purdy. I know it's a little bit early, but things are about to get sketchy at the quarterback position, and I want to make sure I don't get boxed out at quarterback. Yeah, Joel Bitonio retired today for the Browns. It's bad. It's not looking good for old Cleveland. Give in to the anger. Give in to the dark side. But when you're doing zero running back teams, do you ever draft 4 or 5 running backs? That way you can get the full value of whole point of zero running back, making you strong at all the other positions. Well, so think about it like this. The full value of zero running back is you're spending your most draft capital on those other positions. So you're gonna draft fewer. There are no rules in best ball draft strategy. You can do just about anything. Anything can win. All those typical caveats. But if there was a rule, the golden rule of best ball, in my opinion, is where you draft quality, draft less quantity. Where you lack quality, draft more quantity. Because you spent, if you did your auction draft, you did an auction draft with your buddies, your high school buddies or whatever, and you paid for Gibbs and Bijan. You not going to take many more running backs.
I found this on the web.
Oh. Siri's looking up auction dollar prices on Gibbs and Bijan for me. Because you're good at running. You're counting on those guys, right? So you draft a zero running back team. You got 4 awesome wide receivers. You don't need 10 of them. There actually becomes a point of diminishing returns in that if you were right about some of your highest priced assets, those other guys later, even if they're good, are not adding enough points to your team. And because you lack the firepower at running back in this example, and I lack the firepower at say wide receiver or tight end or whatever, I need more bodies and more shots on goal to try to, for an NHL Stanley Cup final example, I need more shots on goal or World Cup. Put the puck on net, right? And see what happens with all these mid to late round running backs. Because you're probably going to have misses. Every draft, even every winning best ball team ever in the history of this 6 years or whatever that we've been doing this has whiffs on it. It's just the hits outweigh the whiffs. And so you need more shots on goal when you only spend, if you spent $150 of your auction budget on wide receiver, quarterback, and tight end, you need to take a bunch of dollar flyers on some running backs in order to try to scrape it together. Because then also in best ball, right, you can't change your lineup or your roster. Oh, we are back on the clock. This is a very nice little Laporta slide that I will take. What's quarterback looking like? We'll see if one of those guys comes back to me, though I do like Wan'Dale, of course. Ricky Pearsall, there goes Wan'Dale. Ricky Pearsall is, of course, a good fit on this team. Let's do. Sure, we'll do Jordan Love. The old Jordan Love, Josh Jacobs stack. Not my favorite, but about to get boxed out of quarterback. Charles says I do the Herzig draft method, draft by ADP for the first 5-ish rounds and build around after. So I there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that I would say is you're not gonna get there's unforeseen risks in ADP drafting, being that you're really just gonna get all the same guys paired together a lot. And you're going to have all the same guys paired together that everyone else has because everyone else just drafts off of ADP. And so if you're never willing to move someone around a little bit, even if you don't care about uniqueness, right? Which is what someone said, why do I care about uniqueness? Just draft the best teams. That's fine. But if you're drafting in any form of volume, if you're doing 20 teams or whatever, who gives a shit? Take your guy to do whatever you want to do. But if you're drafting in like a portfolio of teams, and all you do is draft off ADP through the first 5 rounds on every team, you're always going to have CD is going to be paired with the same couple of guys. Gibbs is going to be paired with the same couple of guys. And so there's actually an inherent risk in that. So it's like, oh, you're not getting overweight on any of these guys because you're just taking the best ADP value or whatever. So you're pretty diversified up top, but you're actually not diversified. Because you draft the same players together. So, you draft Jahmyr Gibbs with the same 4 or 5 guys on every team. So now those 4 or 5 guys, like your Jahmyr Gibbs teams, have no correlation to those guys. They're not fellow Lions. They're not on the Bears, or maybe you do, right? Maybe you overly draft the Week 17 stuff. It's a reason to not overdraft things like the correlation angles. You care about the correlation, but you don't want outsized positions on these combinatorial things. It's a portfolio risk. Like you could draft 8% of everybody and have a riskier portfolio than me drafting 50% of a guy, because you did the same. You took the same risks. It's just because every individual player that you have, you may only have 8%, but you have them with all right. That 8% is paired with the 8% of somebody else, and so your portfolio is actually not diverse at all, even though individually all the players seem diverse. And that's before we get to the merits of taking Brock Bowers at the 1-2 turn when everybody else takes him at the 2-3 turn. %. Also, can't wait for the Josh Jacobs Klanskis. 100%. Robust running back feels great, but then the evil thoughts begin. Aren't you worried a wide receiver will score 40 points in week 17? Yes, it's my greatest fear. It always feels great to draft robust running back because you just have a bunch of wide receiver and you're just like, this will work out somehow. I don't know how it's going to work, but they're all wide receivers who are going to play NFL football games. It's easier. Whereas like zero running back doesn't feel as good because you're like drafting backup running backs and you can't really, you're like, well, I guess hopefully somebody gets hurt, I guess, it's hard to envision how it works. Let's do. I have Laporta, right? Let's just take my boy Keaton. Of course, plays against Rashee in week 17. Is one of, if not my favorite running back to draft. I also don't think the robust bros are going to be big Keaton guys. All right, let's see here. I do like Jalen Coker, but I have, speaking of outsized ownership, I have too much Coker with some of these guys. So let's skip Coker. What's tight end looking like? Ugh. Let's do Shaheed. I mentioned Shaheed earlier. We talked about him today in the Spike Week Discord a little bit, and as I thought it through and looked into him some more, I'm pretty into Shaheed at this price. I may move him up a little bit. I just think we're overly fixated on last year and ignoring a lot of other stuff. Like, he's really good. He's been a good fantasy asset and a good real life wide receiver for years. We drafted him much higher than this. The only reason Rashid Shaheed is going here and not up by the Worthies of the world, where he's gone historically, is because it was fucking weird what happened once he got to Seattle. But everything else, it was weird. And aren't you worried about it? Of course. But like, I'm worried about Jalen McMillan. I'm worried about Khalil Shakir. I'm worried about all these guys right here. But he just, it's not like, if he had not gotten traded, if Rashid Shaheed stayed with the Saints last year, but still signed with the Seahawks, 3 years, $51 million, no fucking chance he goes at this price. None, zero. But we have those, whatever, 8, what was it? 10 games, 10 games or something like that, where he like wasn't playing as much as we would hope, and wasn't really producing for fantasy. And so that's just like scared us all away. Like, as if they paid a guy $50 million and they're not going to play him. It's anything is possible. Assumption of rational coaching can be a fool's errand, but it seems pretty fucking irrational to not play a guy you just signed 3 years, $51 million when all you have is Cooper Kupp and Torrey Horton and Jake Bobo. Is Jake Bobo still on the team? It's also new. It's also not Clint Kubiak anymore. So maybe the new regime from an offensive perspective is likes Shaheed, plays Shaheed more. And also sometimes, we talked about this in the Spike Week Discord, which of course there's a link in the description. If you join Spike Week Premium, you get access to all the premium channels. For anybody that's there and you have Spike Week Premium and you don't see all the stuff, make sure you go to spikeweek.com and go to the account page. If I go over here, you go to account up here, you can connect your Discord account to your Spike Week account, and that will give you access to all the stuff behind the paywall. But we were talking about Shaheed, and it was like, if years ago we would have given him a mulligan, because the expectation, now this is years ago, it's been debunked a little bit in recent seasons, when wide receivers would move teams, especially in season, we sort of were like, yeah, we shouldn't expect too much. You got to go. Now, he had played with Kubiak before, so we expected the transition to be pretty seamless. And obviously it wasn't. They had a good thing going. Like, there's a lot of reasons to like, we're totally fine with Brian Thomas Jr. having a bad season and chasing that again. But we're not so fine with the Rashid Shaheed one. And I wouldn't even classify him as being bad. He just wasn't playing as much as we hoped. Worst position to get boxed out is easily fucking quarterback. By a country mile. No question. Let's see. Let's do. I don't have Sadiq on much of this stuff. Let's do Sadiq. $13 rounds, 2, 4, 5, 2. And we will, of course, take a whole mess of probably we'll see if we get to this is actually not a bad wide receiver room for a robust team. It always feels better on DraftKings. Good afternoon, Greg. Welcome. Thoughts on colleges boycotting Texas Tech? I love the idea. Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously not anti sports betting given my profession. And I bet on sports most days, of course. But from a game integrity perspective, I think it's ridiculous that, and of course, of course, wait, I'm taking Ryan Flanoy on this team, of course, wide receiver 6. I think it's just you can't bet on quite frankly, I don't care if a college athlete bets, on the NBA finals or whatever. I could not possibly care less. Don't bet on your own team. Like that seems really simple. And I know he was what was it like $90,000 over however many years, like $10. His average bet size was like $10, something like that. So like it really didn't matter. But don't just the integrity issues of betting and then Texas Tech, as you said, Texas Tech didn't reinstate him, but judge give him an injunction or whatever the hell it's called, so that he's eligible. I'm not a legal expert, right? Just like I'm not a prison expert or jail expert for how Rasheed's doing. How it worked though with Charles Bediako, Alabama basketball player who was trying to come back from the G League and the NBA and all that kind of stuff. He was ineligible, and then a Alabama judge, shockingly similar to the Lubbock judge, made him eligible, and then they ran it up the flagpole further. Like I said, not my area of expertise, and then he was eventually ineligible. I kind of just assumed that that's what would happen with Sorsby, but I don't. I again, not my area of expertise. So to your point, yeah, man, absolutely, boycott. Do what you think is right. If you think it's ridiculous that he's going to be playing, then stand up for what you believe in. Somebody needs to start doing something about these college sports. Let's see. See, this is like a really good sweet spot for wide receivers, and I draft some Sean Tucker. I've drafted some Emmanuel Wilson. I don't feel, I'm feeling less excited about Emmanuel Wilson at this moment. I am going to draft Trey Harris. I've drafted a little bit of Emmett, a little bit of Katron, a little bit of Braylon. I've drafted a little bit of some of these guys. Of course, you guys know that I'm a big Ray Davis bull, but this is a pretty good wide receiver spot. Like maybe you like Jeremy more than I do, but like Tesla, Tank Dell, I think I haven't taken a ton yet, but is a fun bet. Calvin Ridley, Ted Hurst, A.D. Mitchell, Zachariah Branch. If you like Brandon Ayuk more than I do, great. And I am going to take 3 tight ends on this team, and I am going to take my boy Pat Freiermuth. Again, similar to the 0 running back thing, like you used the early running backs to make sure that the rest of your team is strong. You can make up for the rest of your team, being less strong through quantity. So I like Sam Laporta a lot. I would be more comfortable than the average person with a 2 tight end build with Sam Laporta, but there's not really any reason because the bet on this team was robust running back, in which case let's use those extra chips on these other positions. All the judges are Texas Tech grads. It's funny. Shoot. I agree. Keaton is an awesome fit on robust teams where, if he like totally breaks out, like you would hope, awesome. But what you're betting on is just mix in some spikes here and there. You're not reliant upon him to be consistent because that's what you drafted those early guys for. The early guys, of course, will ideally give you some spikes, but then Keaton mixes in, so when Josh Jacobs has that 8-point game, you hope that Keaton had a 60-yard touchdown today or whatever, but you're not overly dependent upon I when you draft Keaton on like 0 running back teams at pick 125 or something, you are a little bit more, you need a little bit more from him. Saw this unique team at in this draft. CMC, Bowers, Allen, DJ Moore. I don't think that one's unique, is it? I don't think so. Let me I need to get the as soon as we get towards the end here, I will get the spreadsheet for those of you who have not participated before. We're going to do a drafters main event here in just a few moments. We're in the 17th round of this DK Millie, and then we're going to pop on over to drafters. But for every time we do a drafters main event draft here on the channel, the good folks over at Drafters have given me the ability to give away a free ticket. And so if you hang out here in the chat, I'll post a spreadsheet into the YouTube chat, and you can enter your username, your Drafters username. If you do not have a Drafters username, you should use code SPIKE when you sign up. You get a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. So you deposit $100. Drafters gives you $100, and maybe you also win a free ticket. That's a lot of free teams to draft. All right, let's see here. Let's do. I'm going to take Christian Kirk. Don't tell anyone. That's all we'll say about Christian Kirk and leave it at that. I kind of think he's a totally fine late round pick. It's gross. Don't tell anyone that I did it. And then I am actually going to take I have this 49ers stack, and I am going to take a 5th running back here, Jordan James, just another dollar flyer, and then we're going to hammer a couple. Because my wide receivers are actually shockingly good for a robust team. Sorry, my mouse is acting up. Rashee, right? So starting from the 110, we took Ashton Genty and Saquon Barkley, then Rashee Rice, Josh Jacobs, Mike Evans, Parker Washington, Mekhi Lemon, stacked Mike Evans with Brock Purdy. Got a nice little fall on Sam Laporta, and then Jordan Love, of course, with Josh Jacobs. But the end of a quarterback tier is Jordan Love for me. So I wanted to make sure we did not get boxed out. I wasn't going to pick again for 19 more picks, and was definitely not going to get. Bryce Young went at pick 121 in this draft. I was pretty unlikely to get a quarterback I really liked. So had Josh Jacobs. I think it's fine to take Love with Jacobs. Then took Keaton as my RB4 in this robust build. Shaheed, who we talked about, Sadiq, Ryan Flanoy, Trey Harris, Pat Freiermuth. Unsurprising picks for me. They're on a ton of my teams. And then Christian Kirk to go with the 49ers, and Jordan James to go with the 49ers. I took Matt's guy. He has 44% Jordan James. He's my bet to be the backup running back on the 49ers. And we also just frankly know that the 49ers are going to have a million injuries, and you probably want to have these super stacks of the 49ers, because when the electro currents or whatever the hell they got going on at their practice facility start injuring all the players, at least you'll probably still have a couple live bodies standing on your stats. And then we can close out with a couple of wide receivers, and then we'll pop on over to drafters. Do you think Kalen Black is a bad pick? No. See, it's one of those weird ones where I can understand why people would draft Kalen Black. I totally understand. Rookie running back with pretty uninspiring options in terms of the competition to be CMC's backup. They liked him clearly a lot more than everyone else did. So there's real reasons to like him. I just don't think he's good. I think that they reached wildly to select him. And the track record of the San Francisco 49ers with these running backs that they reach on is horrid. And they also never seem like they did this with Trey Sermon, and he never did anything for them. Greg works in electrical distribution and never had a soft tissue injury. Can you go help out the 49ers? That would be nice. Let's go to wide receiver here. I'm going to take Surratt to go with my Ravens wide receiver love here. Saquon Lemon mini stacks I'm coining as the buddy system. I like it. Black feels like Monungai, no fumbles, pro back, ready to contribute. It's an interesting comp. I just think Jordan James is that also and is just better, quite frankly. Roast and grade that crazy drafter in the 106. So that's, yeah. So CMC Bowers is totally fine. You know I love Brock Bowers. Josh Allen, you took the worst pick on the board. And DJ Moore, pick 43, is just so bad. I mean, it's the worst pick in this draft. David Montgomery is fine. Marvin Harrison is not good at football. Alec Pierce is a deep threat with Daniel Jones as his quarterback. Chris Godwin doesn't have functioning legs anymore. Jaden Reed, okay, I like it. Baker Mayfield, not sure if you watched the Bucs offense last year, not great. Let's see if we can get through this before I get back on the clock. Romeo Dobbs is just some bland-ass oatmeal. I like Jalen Coker. Tyler Algier, anytime you can get the backup running back on one of the worst offenses in the NFL when Carson Beck comes in there, you got to have him. Isaiah Pacheco, dust, never going to touch the field because of Jahmyr Gibbs. Dylan Sampson, the backup on the fucking Cleveland Browns, who just lost Joel Bitonio. I'm going to take Tez Walker. Let's see, what else? Katron Allen, and again, anytime the third string running back on the Commanders who went in the 6th round of the NFL draft. Greg Dulcich, yes, I'm sure that this will finally be the year for Greg Dulcich. No chance that the first 4 years of his career, of which he's already played for 3 different teams, and they've all given up on him. Definitely, this is the one for sure. Jaden Blue, I mean, the guy wears Gucci cleats and gets blisters on his feet. He was the 3rd string running back in the college that he went to. I'm sure he'll pop up here and dominate in the NFL. Keon Coleman, Jesus Christ. Are we drafting all the guys who are absolutely horrible? It appears so. And Damon Claiborne, got to get another 6th round pick in the worst rookie running back class of all time. Got to get him on there. So yes, that was fun. Obviously, I don't really dislike the team. It's just fun. It's just fun to do a little roasting. Let's see. That's great. Late to the party, but nice to see a few of your drafts, including the 555, the Lamar flower stacks. I love the Lamar Zay stacks. I love the Ravens, man. Absolutely love the Ravens. All right, let's get over here on drafters. Oh, Christ. I need 10 of yous. I need 10 of yous. Let me go ahead and get this free ticket. In order for us to give away the free ticket, we got to do the draft. So I'm going to get the spreadsheet open, pop it on into the chat so everybody can enter to win a free ticket to the Drafters main event, which is, of course, $15, 250,000 smackers to first place. They added weekly prizes. this year. Oh shoot, I thought I was sharing my screen. I'm sorry. This is my fault. My fault. They added weekly prizes this year, which is pretty fun. $170,000 total out of the $1.5 million prize pool. So every week, somebody's going to win $5,000 every single week for scoring the most points in the tournament. Just a fun little extra upside swing. I'm generally torn on things like this, like weekly prizes and the regular season prizes in Best Ball Mania. I thought were terrible, but I do think when you have a cumulative scoring format, right, which is what Drafters is, if you want to keep people engaged and like, let's say, whatever, you get off to a really hot start but then you get injuries, or vice versa. You get off to a slow start, but then some of your guys start picking, Ryan Flanoy doesn't do anything for the first month, and then George Pickens gets traded and Flanoy picks up. Like, I'm probably cooked I'm just making up an example, right? I'm probably cooked to win the whole thing, but it gives me something extra to sweat and try to enjoy during the. I can still cheer on my guys. Anything to up the sweat value of the cumulative format, I think is a positive. So I'm into it, even though like I said, I've historically not been the world's biggest like weekly prize and regular season prize type guy. They didn't detract too much from the prize pool. There's still $250,000 to first place. Top 11 all get $10,000. So I think it's a pretty awesome format. I will also just add, of course, we're giving away a. Did I put the? Oh yeah, I put the spread. This is simply, it's the most basic spreadsheet ever. If you would like to enter, put your name in this first column here where you see the other folks, and we'll spin the wheel and give a free ticket away at the end. But also, I did want to note, we got a few more weeks on Drafters. I'm closing. I think this is my 40th draft, but this happens all summer. But until June 30th, they have double the rewards. So when you do 10 drafts, they give you a free ticket. When you get to 25 drafts, they give you another free ticket. When you get to 50, they give you a free ticket. 75, right? So you can get a bunch of free tickets over the course of the summer, and the milestones are double up until June 30th. So I'm definitely going to get to 50. I think I might get to 75 to get 4 more free tickets. But like I said, this is my 40th, and I'm definitely going to do 50 by June 30th. How many are you waiting on? 4. We are 8 of 12. Already multi-tabling, but I'll hop in for you. Enjoy the EV. It's better for you that you're in the draft with me if you're multi-tabling. You got a much better chance to soak up some good picks, especially if you like early wide receivers, because I'm drafting early running backs. That's funny. 46% Flowers, over 51% Flanoy. Honestly, no pushback from me. Honestly, no pushback. Actually, haven't. You know what I haven't done? I think we're about to fill. It is 11 of 12. We just need one more. What I haven't done lately is actually just go look at my individual exposures in the Drafters main event. I have drafted 3 today, 2 or 3 that I haven't uploaded here to Draft IQ. But let's take a look. Go to the old draft board. We could just get a quick gauge for my exposure over here on Drafters. So as you would expect, a bunch of Bowers, Neighbors, Rasheed, Chuba. I do like bet even better on Drafters. We are full. Sick. I'm at the 111. Definitely hella friends and family draft. This is like all of you are here. I recognize like every name. Good God. This is not going to go well for me. Let's see. 19% Herbert. Lamar, Herbert, Lawrence. 11% Caleb is 14% Mahomes. You can see where I'm living on. Have I taken Josh Allen yet? Where is Josh Allen on the board here? I have 11% Jacobs and 3% Josh Allen. But you can see where I live at quarterback, right? Lamar. I'm really probably need to get Drake May up a little bit here. Have not taken Burrow yet is kind of fascinating. Goff, Love. I've recently gotten more Bo Nix into my life. Streamer who I normally disagree with, all his takes that today Emmanuel Wilson is a cut candidate. Should I add to my 20%, 23%, or start fading? I don't think he's a. I mean, I guess anyone is a cut candidate. He's not like making a ton of money. He's making $3 million. Emmanuel Wilson contract, 1 year up to 2 point. Yeah, so anybody on that little amount of money, I think, is technically a cut candidate. He's always had risk. I just think that he's like a functional NFL running back and shot. Like, why would you cut him? I mean, maybe he gets cut when Sharps comes back. But I find it pretty unlikely Sharps. Even they said it's more like mid-season, right? Isn't that the latest quote about Sharps? Is like, yeah, he'll be back like maybe mid-season. So why would they cut Emmanuel Wilson? Like, maybe he's not, because he's competing, of course, with price, but specifically like the passing down work. He's a reliable passing down player. Of course, Genty goes. We're gonna give the 112 CD. Oops. Let's do Saquon again here. I'm kind of back in on Saquon. What's interesting about Saquon is we got some reports about catching more passes, playing more passing downs, which has been part of the issue. Was it part of the issue last season when the big home run, long touchdowns dried up? The pass catching wasn't there to give the floor. But I think there's potentially a pretty nice little bounce back from Saquon and a potential to gain more in the passing game. That's not really Tank's thing, and I'm not sure that they're going to excuse me. Not sure that they're going to play Will Shipley this year on passing downs. And then I'm going to take Ken Walker. Get a little outside my comfort zone. Is Draft IQ a Spike Week product? It is. It comes so right. You see on your screen the Draft Hacker with like all these exposures, and when it was on DraftKings, you could see you can put schedule stuff on here on Drafters too, but you can customize all the different stuff you want to see, and then you have Draft IQ that allows you to analyze your portfolio as well as your opponents' teams. You know, so the people you've drafted against specifically, not everybody in the tournament, but you can look at under every nook and cranny is what I like to say of your portfolio. It's kind of crazy. Everything that you can see, you can see your, who if you drafted the most with quarterbacks. Let's see, your player combinations, right? So like I can see how like really quickly, Jahmyr Gibbs. Oh shoot, AJ Brown is on 60% of my Jahmyr Gibbs teams. Probably don't want to take AJ Brown on the next. The sun just keeps killing me over here. This is why we do morning drafts, so I don't have to deal with this. I did buy a something to. I'm down in the basement, so we got this egress over here, and I bought a something to cover it up. Finally, it's only been 6 years, no big deal. But anyway, yeah, Draft IQ, the Draft Hacker, the Draft Optimizer is new this year. I want to make sure I'm going to dive more into that this week, but it will obviously help you stay on track for your draft plan, right? You have target exposures, you have rules you want to input into the draft, groups of players you want to draft together or don't want to draft together. You can put all that stuff in. You set it up. We're not giving you the answers. You can use what I put in there if you would like, but you can set it all up yourself, just similar like a DFS optimizer, where you get to set your target exposures and groups and all that different kind of stuff. We built one for best ball as well. So you see here, like this is the order of, okay, until Trey McBride goes, which of course he's going to go before it comes back to me. The sort of recommendation is Trey McBride. The next recommendation is Pickens and Devontae, et cetera, because of what my target exposures are on these players. Like my target exposure for Ladd is 15%, but I only have 5. My average draft rate with the players that are at the top, my first couple picks on this team, I don't have Ladd with those guys. So something to consider with the draft optimizer. All of the stuff, plus the rankings and the Discord, everything, all one subscription, $39.99 a month or $200 for the calendar year. Too many options at running back takes. So keeping Wilson with that type of news isn't something I do. What news? There's no news, right? Just speculation. I saw that people like, oh, George Holani running with the ones. Emmanuel Wilson isn't practicing, so isn't so. So to be clear, I'm going to move it. I've had Emmanuel Wilson as like a super late running back of like maybe I can get some early season production, right? Like he plays alongside Price and maybe Holani, but scores some fantasy points on a Seattle team that's going to be run heavy and has a great defense, whatever. But I'm going to move him down because, I think it's wide open. I still think I would bet Wilson to have an early season role, but it's certainly possible I was not giving Holani enough credit, and they seem to like him. And I think one of the most important things that we have to do over the course of the entire summer is be humble and have some humility and like, look, if they like him, they fucking like him, And I'm willing to concede that they might like George Holani, certainly more than I do, but more than I thought that they did. Let's see here. Let's get real fucking robust with it. Saquon Barkley, Ken Walker, Javonte Williams. Oh, God. This makes me sick to my stomach. Yeah. You guys are welcome for all the wide receivers. The whole friends and family draft going on here, just getting awesome teams. Are the ones even practicing? It's like there's so many guys sitting out, like Elijah Surratt caught a long touchdown today, but Zay and Bateman aren't practicing. Surratt caught a long touchdown from Lamar. That's exciting. He's playing with Lamar and he's making plays. It's like, what is exciting that he's making plays, but Zay and Bateman are not playing. Let's do Neighbors. We'll skip Jacobs. We'll let somebody else have Jacobs. We did Rasheed on the other team. We'll try Neighbors on this team. It's always funny though, because I always make the joke that zero running back bros actually love running backs more. Like, why do you hate running backs? It's like, well, I don't. I draft a lot more of them than anyone else does, Like, dude, I draft 7 and 8 running backs on every team. I think I like running backs as much as anybody else does. I just like the superstar wide receivers paired with more running backs. With this, it's like, well, I really actually get to get into my back. If I love, and I do think it is one of my stronger skill sets that I haven't pulled the lever enough over the years, in that I think I'm better at identifying, right, like the Ryan Flanois, even like the boring veteran wide receivers that are like underpriced, even though like Michael Pittman, I think, is just flat out underpriced. And reading the tea leaves on some rookie wide receiver prospects, or following camp news for potential breakout type wide receivers, I think it's one of my better skills. And so if that is one of my better skills, I should again. It's sort of the back to front drafting concept where if you're maybe better at the mid to late round wide receivers than you are the mid to late round running backs, you should lean into that a little bit more. And so, what does that mean? Maybe drafting a little bit more early running backs than you would normally. I also just frankly enjoy like putting together these wide receiver rooms. Like I said, getting into my bag and like I get excited to draft Flanoy. I get excited to draft Ray Harris. I get excited to draft the all these shit bum Ravens wide receivers at the end of drafts. I really liked Skylar Bell, the prospect. And if I just keep drafting a bunch of zero running back teams, like I'm never going to get, Scott. So now I can get into my Skylar Bell bag. I can get, the Rashid Shaheed conversation. I think Jalen Coker is a good football player. Doesn't have a lot of utility if you draft Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Zay Flowers, and Malik Neighbors. You know what I mean? So I'm trying to be better about taking a step back and really analyzing the things that I think are the edges, which is, like I said, like if you really believe in Ryan Flanoy, like I do, well, then lean into that. What does that mean? Lean into that edge. Rome Tate, Bucky. I wonder if this guy, I know Parker's gone. I wonder if this guy will take Bucky, because Bucky would be a kind of a really fun on this build. Sure, let's do it. Let's have some fun. And now I won't draft any. That's it. We're going to take 4 running backs: Saquon Barkley, Ken Walker, Javonte Williams, Bucky Irving. How sick am I stacking Love with Sky Moore on DraftKings? As sick as they come. Seek help. That is a cry for help. And I know that because I've drafted a lot of terrible clicks over the years, including this season. And sometimes that's the sign to, I think it might be time to go try out some therapy. Okay, I love Jordan Tyson. However, 100% of my Javonte teams and 100% of my, what is this? I need to do something else here. So let's do the BTJ thing. Let's do the BTJ thing. See if we can't get Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence should align here. I think his ADP is right around 83. It is exactly 83 on Drafters. So hopefully, if probably not ideal to be streaming this with everyone in the room being a fellow Spike Weeker, but nonetheless, hopefully get Trevor Lawrence on this team. But so seriously, fantasy football does not work this way. Best ball does not work this way. But it is fun. It is fun to say, okay, think about now. Ken Walker is more, and Javonte, of course, are more expensive than they were last season. But Saquon Barkley was a top 5 pick last year. Malik Neighbors was a first-round pick last year. Bucky Irving was a second-round pick last year. And Brian Thomas was a 1-2 turn pick last year. Putting them all together on the same team would not have been possible. Now, you obviously add Ken Walker, would have been, Ken Walker was a fourth round pick, and Javonte was in like the 120s. But betting on some bounce backs for those guys. Exactly. In order to get Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik, you could not have Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Saquon Barkley on the same team, and Bucky Irving on the same team last year. Because Bucky, let's just even say BTJ and Neighbors were second-round picks. They were at the 1-2 turn. They were drafted together I drafted them together a decent clip last year. But you couldn't get them with Saquon, and then you definitely couldn't get Bucky on that team. And you probably didn't then Ken Walker could. So this combination, it's multiple different bounce backs, and it's very unlikely that all of these different guys are going to bounce back. Aren't you worried about Bucky and BT? Yeah, I'm terrified of the Bucky Irving health stuff and the weirdness of them having Gainwell and Sean Tucker there. Aren't you worried that Brian Thomas Jr. is more like what he was the first half of his rookie season and year 2. Yes, I am worried about all that. But there's clearly a certain certain part of the probability scale that's like, no, Brian Thomas is actually good and he was hurt last year. No, Bucky is actually still really good. And you're just getting a discount on him now. Malik Neighbors ends up fine, at least at some point this season, and you're getting a discount on him. And so that's how you can win some of these tournaments. You need, top 1% outcomes on several different players, not your whole team, but you need these top percentile outcomes on multiple different players across your team. And some of the easiest ones to envision are last year was just a fluky injury-riddled season for Brian Thomas Jr. And he is the guy we thought he was. Same thing with Bucky, just injuries. He's still really good. And maybe the Bucks bounce back on offense. Malik Neighbors, no one questions Malik Neighbors' talent. It's all health. What if the Twitter doctors are wrong and he's fine? It's also best ball. I also drafted a robust team. I'm going to draft 1 million wide receivers on this team. So I don't need Malik Neighbors like week 1 to score 25 fantasy points. I need him to be good at some point, sooner rather than later, but not, you're not getting these nuclear games from every single one of your players every single week. Nor do you need that. It's not a requirement to win. Fresher Wall says, I had to share this. Thought I just had the draft of all drafts. Everything fell to me perfectly. Strongest QB room with Herbert and Allen. Same bye week. No third quarterback. If it's on drafters, I do not like having my buys together on drafters as much as possible. But I don't worry about it quite as much as the average person does on DraftKings and Underdog. You're just hoping that they score so many points over the course of the regular season that missing out on those 15 points or whatever in that week doesn't matter. We got everybody. This is a drama-filled draft here. All right, we'll take Lawrence. Stack, of course, with Brian Thomas Jr. Let's see what's going on at the quarterback position. I could stack Mahomes with Walker. I could take Dart with Neighbors. I could try to bet. Well, nope, can't take Mahomes now. I could try to backstack Purdy. Oh, wow. I have Knicks on all my Javonte teams and all of my Javonte plus Saquon teams. Wow, yeah. Okay, I've been doing the Broncos stack here. Clearly, Sutton Knicks. I've done Sutton Knicks on already on similar teams. What's Goff's ADP? 106. I don't know that Goff is going to come back, though. Well, Mekhi Lemon it is. Need my rookie upside. What's going on in the chat over here? So that's 8 rounds over here on Drafters. A reminder, I'm gonna share the link to this sheet that you are seeing on your screen. All you got to do, if you would like to win a free ticket to the Drafters main event at the end of the draft, if your name is in this column, I'm going to post everybody's usernames on the wheel. If you don't have a username, that's okay. Put your YouTube username in there or whatever. We'll get you figured out, and you can get an account set up, and they'll still give you a free ticket. But every time we draft a Drafters main event team this summer, I'm giving away a free ticket. So there's plenty more to come. If you're not able to enter today, come back and join me the rest of the week. I'm live today. Apologies for changing up the schedule. I much prefer the morning drafts, but we had a little technological snafu here at the Bind 4 residence this morning. New computer in hand, but nonetheless, 11 a.m. Eastern, Tuesdays through Fridays, you can come hang out and draft some best ball teams with me all summer. Oh, baby. Two Mules, you are speaking my language. What do you think about doubling up on running backs from Pittsburgh and New England on the same roster? I am a fan. We like to call that around here. I believe it was Big Country in the Discord. If it was someone else, I apologize, but I'm pretty sure it was in the Spike Week Discord. Coined this term. So we used to call these things like handcuffing, but football has evolved, right? In that there's like a bunch of committee, like these are committee backfields, more or less, or we're expecting them to be like multiple guys play and multiple guys can have fantasy value in the same backfield. But then also, like, if someone misses, so for example, last year, the Patriots were just a home run if you did this. And frankly, Jalen Warren plus Kenny Gainwell, it happened to be Gainwell, not Caleb Johnson. But if you did this and you paired them on the same teams, it was actually a killer way to both create a floor at the running back position, but also a ceiling. Because when Travion like got benched for missing pass blocking, Ramondre becomes more valuable in that week. So you use two spots, but you're like always getting both floor at the running back position, but also spikes, right? When Ramondre missed a month or whatever, Travion went nuts. Now, then Ramondre came back, and they're sort of passing the baton back and forth. So it's ping-ponging. Maybe somebody misses a game with a concussion or whatever. You get to soak up all this. Buying backfields is, I think, one of the more powerful things that doesn't get done enough, because we've sort of, over the years, from our old school fantasy football baseline of how we think about putting together rosters, like handcuffing was a thing. Like, oh, well, if Christian McCaffrey gets hurt, and then handcuffing became, out of, it was in vogue and then not in vogue over the years of fantasy football. But best ball is a very different game. Now, do I want to draft Brian Robinson on my Bijan Robinson teams? No. That's like more of a handcuff. And then, there's other issues like are the Falcons just going to be really, really bad if Bijan's not out there? Whereas this, like, it's not really a handcuff. That's why we've coined, the folks in the Spike Week Discord, shout out BC, have coined it buying a backfield. And I try to do it, not on every single team, but I actually actively try to do this. Like you see South with the Spike Week logo next to me, drafting out of the 110, took Warren and Dowdle. And I'm a big fan of that one. The New England one, as Ronnie says, is a little bit expensive, but I do still do it at times. I think my favorite is the Vikings with Jones and Mason, or the Panthers with Chuba and Brooks. You can also do this with like the RB2 and RB3. I'll do it even with like Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. It's like, it's pretty much Ray gets the most value, but Ty Johnson can still give you some useful games if something happens to James Cook. Keaton and Kamani Vidal. You could do it with the Broncos guys. Any two of the three also. Harvey Dobbins, Harvey Coleman, Dobbins Coleman. I think that it's a really strong lever to pull in your drafts. See, now Goff's going to come back to me, isn't he? Son of a bitch. Well, at least everyone's staying in their lanes here, and that's nice. The question becomes, do I want to have a Goff Tesla stack, or how about, damn, I have Matthew Golden on all these teams too. I don't have Worthy on them. Let's take Worthy, and we'll figure this thing out. We'll put our heads together and we'll figure this thing out. Yeah, Warren Dowdle is a really fun one, I think. One of the better ones, for sure. You could do this with some Seattle stuff. I've done it with Seattle too. Tennessee, Washington. Washington is a good one. Again, it's sort of three guys with Katron. Same thing with Tennessee. But like, take two of them. Be more. Okay, Be more did the Love Golden thing. How about, you know what? I probably need to take more. Let's do Baker. That's the first time I've drafted Baker Mayfield on drafters, and I have not drafted Baker Mayfield very many times. I think I have Bucky, obviously. I can do a McMillan or a Ted Hurst or a Kate Otten. Give myself some stack. Obviously, I have Lawrence, BTJ. Give myself some backstack options. Give myself some cheaper tight end stacking options. I thought about Kyler Hawkinson, or as I mentioned, I'm skipping Nix because, as you see on your screen here, if you're watching on YouTube, shout out to the Draft Hacker, is that I only have 11% Bo Nix on drafters, but he just goes off the board. But I have him on like when I've done a start like this, I've taken Bo Nix. I had taken Bo Nix Sutton stacks on this already multiple times. So I don't want all of my, right. That's the combinatorial thing we were talking about earlier with if you just follow ADP. I was sort of following ADP with that stack, but it doesn't even have to be just following ADP. It's like there's no reason that all of, like, if you do Saquon, Ken Walker or whatever, or Saquon and Javonte, that those teams should also always have Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton, even though they go on that side of the board. You should have other stacks on teams with certain starts. Yeah, Baker, of course, week 17 matchup just got a lot worse with the Myles Garrett trade. That is for sure. But on drafters, right, we're not worried about the week 17 matchup. We're worried about the whole season. And I think, aren't you worried about the Bucks? No Mike Evans, Chris Godwin getting older. Buka really tailed off last year. I'm not sure Jalen McMillan is like a star. Again, aren't you worried? Yeah, but I think there's bounce back potential with them as well. And so I think it was a hole in my portfolio that we tried to plug here by getting a Baker Mayfield share and having Bucky Irvin help lead me there. Oh man, Patrick is getting brutalized. Everybody, Caleb was sniped away from him, and I took Worthy from him when he has Mahomes. You do hate to see it. I like this. It's best ball. Platooning running backs on a great fantasy running back team is like getting the best running back on the waiver wire before the season starts. I'm a big fan of that analogy. I'm a big fan of analogies, period. So if you got a good one, toss it in the chat because it's like catnip for me. That's definitely something to balance. Roni says the pick guys are in the QB window, which is something to figure out for sure. But so if you take Lamar or you take Daniels or May or something like that, they can fit a little bit better. Or you take right, so like South has what, Goff and Lamar, and then but you pull, like he pulled up Warren a little bit to set up that. You can do things like that. Move guys. That's another reason to sort of move guys around the board a little bit, is to get some of those combinations that maybe you want, but it doesn't perfectly align with ADP. Friendly reminder that in the YouTube chat, if you are hanging out watching, there's a link to a Google Doc that is where you can enter to win a free ticket on Drafters. Oh man, this is my Keaton range, and I can't do anything about it. It's not very fun. We'll take McMillan to stack with Baker. And there goes Keaton, of course. Let's see. Ooh. Tyrone Tracy. Look, it's a spike week draft. I know he ain't coming back. Let's just take my boy. All right, 12 rounds. So we got 8 more to go. I got to get me some tight ends. We don't have any tight ends yet, but obviously a robust team here. Saquon Barkley, Ken Walker, Javonte Williams, Malik Neighbors to try to recreate some superstar wide receiver upside. Obviously scary, but I'm going to have a ton of wide receivers on this team. And Bucky Irving, 4 running backs in the first 5 rounds. Please don't tell anybody that I did this. Brian Thomas Jr. stacked with Trevor Lawrence, Mekhi Lemon, Xavier Worthy, and then Baker Mayfield. Of course, we took Bucky, so we built out the little Buck stack and added Jalen McMillan to it, and then took Ryan Flanoy. Finally, let me get a Keaton share today. You took him in 2 drafts earlier, right before me. That's great. The Flanoy price is really getting out of hand on drafters. We are all trying to figure out who did this. I will say, we have these arguments all summer and everything, like the best ball niche sicko community of like whose rankings or whose player takes or whatever are driving certain guys' prices, whatever. I will say that the Spike League community kind of dominates the ADP on drafters. Like Flanoy has been consistently way higher because that's my boy, and we were ahead of the curve, and everyone is catching up. And now it's everybody. He's getting the full flag plant from Matt Harmon and Evan Silva and everything. So the steam ain't stopping. This has got to be the top on Flanoy, I guess. But like, who's bet? I think this range is all like wide open. Love Flanoy, but isn't Diggs just a better pick there? I mean, Diggs is not even on an NFL football team. He's a rotational slot receiver at this point in his career. We don't really know where he's going to land. It's possible that he ends up the better pick, but like, I think I just have a wildly different perspective on how good Flanoy is or can be. Like, why Khalil Shakir, Rashid Shaheed, Trey Tucker, a fucking cornerback on the Jaguars, Jawan Jennings. Like, Jawan Jennings is the wide receiver 3 on the Vikings. Travis Hunter is a starting corner on the Jaguars. Stephon Diggs is probably going to end up somewhere as a wide receiver 3 slot receiver. Rashid Shaheed, I like him. We just talked about in the first draft about how I like him. Khalil Shakir is just a slot receiver on a run-heavy Bills team. From a Spike perspective, being the wide receiver 3 on the Dallas Cowboys is just as good. Like, like I like Omar Cooper. Omar Cooper is a wide receiver 3 on the Jets. Denzel Boston is on the Browns. Antonio Williams is a slot receiver on the Commanders. Jaden Higgins, is Jaden Higgins better? Like, Jaden Higgins isn't guaranteed to be the wide receiver 2. He's an outside wide receiver, but is he better than Tank? Is he going to end up better than Tank? I don't know. So I drafted Jalen. Is Jalen McMillan better than Ryan Flanoy? So I think it's just a pretty wide. Like, I think once you get up to like Concepcion, Golden, but like, is Matthew Golden better? You don't know. He just has the draft capital that we're still holding on to. He hasn't been better to this point in his career. Okay, oh, beautiful. Brenton Strange to go with my Jag stack. I think it just feels weird, honestly. And it feels weird for me too. Even as a Flanoy stan. It just this is a guy that most people had never even heard of before last season. And still didn't. A lot of people, the casual observers, you guys knew, but the casual observers didn't really even know who this guy was even last year. They're like, oh, who is this random guy that just caught a touchdown for the Cowboys? And then you go back to forgetting about him. Let's see. Sadiq, Hunter Henry, and Hawkinson. Boston, Debo, Antonio. Oh, no, come on. play the hits. I think Trey Harris is going to be rising too. It does not appear that they're overly concerned with adding a Keenan Allen. The latest reports today were that the Chargers were not interested in A.J. Brown, and a part of their reason why they were not interested in A.J. Brown is they are extremely excited about Trey Harris for the Chargers. And since I am extremely excited about Trey Harris, any confirmation bias seems like a fun thing to ride with. He's also just, again, on a team like in a build like this, Trey Harris isn't always super duper useful in certain structures. On a team like this is the exact kind of wide receiver I want to target. And whether you take him at 158 or 175, like, it doesn't fucking matter. It really doesn't. ADP value on $1 and $2 auction players. Just none. South drafting right next to me. Does not get Trey. Who's got Herbert? Where's the Herbert drafter? Oh, the 101. Little QJ Herbert stack out of the 101 with an equally robust team. I like it. Gibbs, Brees, Kyren, a little that's Matt at the 101 with a fun Gibbs, Brees, Kyren, Devontae, Christian Watson, QJ Herbert, Stafford to go with that Rams stack, Laporta, Jordan Mason, Jalen Coker, Gadsden to go with the Charger stack. He did, however, take a defensive player, but oh baby, Kamani Vidal. Speaking of the top, I love it. This is a drafter after my own heart, Matt, there in the 101. Let me put the so we're in round 15. So this will be last call for the free ticket giveaway. Pretty good odds to win today, it appears. There's a link to that sheet to enter the free ticket giveaway. Just put your name in that first column where everybody else's is. I need to give the latest names to the folks at Drafters tonight. So if you have won a ticket and not received it yet, be on the lookout. I'll make sure and get that wrapped up. It's so swelteringly hot outside here, like in the fucking 90s already. It's absolutely insane. What is it outside? 92 and humid as shit. But it's always so damn cold in my basement. First world problems. Mules has, oh boy, only Malik Willis thus far. Yes, crossing your fingers is a wise decision when you only have Malik Willis at quarterback through 15 rounds in a cumulative scoring format, in any format, if we're being honest, but certainly when you're trying to outscore 120,000 teams. Feel like you should be higher on Dak. I am pretty high on Dak. I need to get more. I agree. I need to get more Dak Prescott teams. 100%. Damn it. Freiermuth goes. Let's see if there's anybody back here that I particularly want. No, so let's do my boy Gunner. I think Gunner's a pretty. Freiermuth is a guy who I take a ton of course, but I think Gunner is a reasonable late tight end click as well. That is a lot of running backs in a row. Looks like a typical Eric team. Wow. I'm going to take, I really do not like Cade Otton, but when nature calls, I guess, on a buck stack, these things happen. But I agree. Let's see what my Dak exposure is. Let's go back over here. I guarantee it's not where I want it to be. Yeah, see, I've only drafted Dak. I think I have more Dak. Let's see what it is on the other sites. This is just in the DK Millie. So 52 teams in the DK Millie. I have 12% Dak on DraftKings and 15% Dak on Underdog in BBM. So 52 BBM teams. I have 15% Dak, and what did we say? 12% Dak on DraftKings. I think those are fine numbers, but I agree. I need to get that up on Drafters, and that's what she said. And I need to. He's a priority for me. It's just, I like a lot of those quarterbacks in that window. I take a lot of, obviously Herbert is my favorite, but Dak is someone that's a priority for me as well. It's just weird. It's hard to rank, a quarterback who goes in the 70s who you like, but I like Dak, but I like Herbert and Caleb and Jaden Daniels and Lamar and Lawrence and Mahomes, but Bo Nix is fine. I really like Brock Purdy. I like Jackson Dart. I like Kyler fine. I like Goff a lot. So the quarterback thing is always just a little bit tricky. But I'm glad that we just had the conversation because I need to make sure that I get more Dak Prescott, especially on Drafters. I love the Cowboys stack. And I'm one of the weird people who's willing to back stack. You take Ferg and Flanoy, or just take him with Flanoy. There's nothing wrong with that. Not as fun as CD or Pickens, but you can get home. You can get home with a Dak Flanoy stack for sure. Jacoby Brissett, Deshaun Watson. Nothing screams scoring the most points in a 120,000 person tournament like Malik Willis, Jacoby Brissett, Deshaun Watson. That's a pretty good save. Brissett did report to OTAs for anybody that was really worried about whether Jacoby Brissett was going to report or not. He has reported to OTAs. Let's see. I hate my team out of the 12 spot. So if that is your typical team, God bless. CD, James Cook, Bird and T, Tate, Rome, Mahomes, Kraft, Love, Golden. That's a fine team. Then you hammered running back, as you should. Keaton, Tracy, Sampson, Algier, Tank, Ray Davis. Yeah, I know you probably want a little bit more at running back. All right. We got 4 wide receivers to take on this team here. Oh yeah, we'll do a Tank Dell. Another, I think, good fit on a team like this. My wide receivers are Neighbors, BTJ, Lemon, Worthy, Jalen McMillan, Ryan Flanoy, Trey Harris, and Tank Dell. I'm comfortable with that. Let's see what I'm going to do Surratt here. I like Surratt as a prospect. I have the most Tez Walker. That's sort of my hot take, truth serum take, whatever. Not truth serum because I'm happy to share it. But my hot take is I think Tez is going to emerge in the wide receiver room, but it's not, it's not based on a whole lot other than Eric's holding on to prospects that he liked. Mitchell Tinsley, too cute for a back stack, in your opinion? Probably. Yeah, probably. But that being said, I took my first Eric All share today. Another guy who I liked quite a bit as a prospect and has just tore his ACL every single season, literally. He keeps tearing his ACL, but he's out there. I'm kind of shocked. He's out there participating in OTAs. Has me a tick lower on Gesicki than I was before. I kind of figured it was just over for Eric All. But he's out there playing. And what the issue, I don't whether issue is the right word or not, but Gesicki is a glorified wide receiver. So like we list him as a tight end. He's technically a tight end, but he's essentially just like a slot receiver, which is fine from a fantasy perspective, but it does box him out of, speaking of being boxed out of positions, it boxes Gesicki out from like really high end fantasy outcomes because there's just a lot of personnel groupings and a lot of game scripts and everything that he does not have access to even running routes or certainly earning targets. And he's obviously not going to earn an exorbitant amount of targets with Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins there. And they throw to their running backs a lot in Cincy. I still think Mike Gesicki has value, but Eric All is more of a well-rounded, they've used Drew Sample types as like Gesicki is not a blocker. So when we want to have a real tight end in there to block, Eric All can actually do a little bit of both. So if this guy's healthy, that was part of the perk of him kind of popping up at little points in his career and little points over the summer and past seasons, is that he actually can be the blocker, but also can catch passes. So like I said, I actually took my very first, it was not intentional. It just, speaking of getting boxed out again, I got sort of boxed out at tight end. And so I took a 20th round Eric All share just because it's fun. And we got the news and hey, I still believe. That's amazing. Of course, the person who has drafted multiple Eric All teams, he is here. Of course. Shout out, Drew. I noticed you drafted a team earlier that had both running back picks early with the same bye week. Do you try to avoid that in cumulative? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me. I have other running backs to fill that week. And then I'll have those two backs the whole rest of the season. Makes sense. I would take Eric All. I know whether or not you need a tight end is a whole different can of worms. But I would take Eric All or Gesicki if I had to backstack them. All right, I need to vary up some of my late wide receivers probably a little bit. We have Worthy and we have Ken Walker, right? So let's do a Tyquan. A Tyquan share. Let's go to the rankings. You can see why I get a lot of Tez and Bateman as well. But I think we'll do Skylar is on 50% of my Brenton Strange teams. That's fucking weird. But he's not. I don't have him with Saquon. I don't have him with Walker. I don't have him with Javonte. I don't have him with Lawrence. So I'm going to take a Skylar Bell share here. I want to get a little bit more of him, some early positive vibes out of camp with Skylar Bell. Also another good late flyer, I think, on these types of teams. So we drafted another robust team here, of course. Trevor Lawrence and Baker Mayfield, Saquon Barkley, Ken Walker, Javonte Williams, and Bucky Irving at running back. Malik Neighbors. Oh boy. Okay. Get ready for all the wide receivers. Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Mekhi Lemon, Xavier Worthy, Jalen McMillan, Ryan Flanoy, Trey Harris, Tank Dell, Elijah Surratt, Tyquan Thornton, and Skylar Bell. So we mixed in some rookies and some upside swings with some boring. There's a little bit of boring in there, of course. Tyquan Thornton, Jalen McMillan. Come on. Brenton Strange, Gunnar Helm, and Kate Otten. Speaking of boring, about as boring of a tight end room as you can get, but we're hoping for the Jag stack and the Bucks stack to push us through. All right. We need to give away a free ticket. Last call was in round 15 or so. Let's get everybody's Name onto the wheel. I don't think it puts the spaces. No. Okay, we're good. All right. Nice shot. Nice odds to win here. Again, if you have won one of these already, be on the lookout. Feel free to DM me as well to if you need to, get me your username or anything like that. But let's go ahead and give away another free ticket. Shout out to our friends at Drafters. Matt Forte, 55. I assume that is your Drafters username. You're drafting 16 at 101. Congratulations on your free ticket. And again, be on the lookout for that to hit your account here very, very soon. I'll be back on a regular schedule tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. I'm going to talk about some issues I've been encountering with similar to the Dak conversation. Like, I have this macro take, say, about a team, but maybe the individual pieces are a little bit more difficult for me, or vice versa. Maybe I like some of the individual pieces, but I'm pretty terrified about the offense or the ecosystem or whatever. We're going to talk about some of that, and of course, be back to draft some teams on our regular schedule, 11 a.m. Eastern, the rest of the week. Legendary Sickos coming this weekend. Thank you guys for hanging out. If you guys give it the thumbs up, it's really, really helpful on the video, of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel. And yes, I am drafting running backs. Maybe we'll get back to some wide receivers tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and I'll catch you guys in the morning. Peace.
Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there. You can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.